Admiral Korvis Nax stood on the observation deck of the Confederation flagship Dominant Paradigm, his forearms clasped behind his back as he gazed at the blue-green planet hanging in the void before him. The sight should have filled him with the usual rush of conquest. Instead, he felt an odd twinge of was that anxiety? Nonsense. The Galactic Confederation had subjugated or diplomatically integrated 17 sentient species in the last decade alone. This Earth would be number 18. "Admiral, the preliminary scans are complete," announced Commander Preeti Lorne, her skin shimmering with the characteristic purple bioluminescence of agitation common to her species. "They confirm what we already knew: primitive combustion vehicles, fossil fuel dependencies, and weapons systems at least 3 technological generations behind our standard arsenal." "Wonderful," Nax drawled, his mandibles clicking in the way his staff recognized as his version of a smirk. "Any other breaking news? Perhaps they've discovered that water is wet or that stars are hot." Commander Lorne didn't laugh. None of his crew ever did. Not because the Admiral wasn't funny, he absolutely was, thank you very much, but because the Raxicodian concept of humor was about as alien to them as it would be to the humans below. "Actually, sir," Lorne continued, "intelligence did flag some inconsistencies." "Inconsistencies," Nax repeated flatly. "Such as?" "Well, their communications network is quite robust for a level 3 civilization. And there are unusual energy signatures we can't quite identify. Plus, we've detected what might be artificial constructs on their moon and possibly Mars, which contradicts their apparent technological capacity." Nax waved a dismissive hand. "Monitoring glitches. Or perhaps some of our competitors have been here. The Zordex are always sticking their appendages where they don't belong." "Sir, there's no evidence of Zordex." "Enough. I've studied the cultural broadcasts myself." Nax tapped a command into his wrist device, bringing up a 3-dimensional projection of humans engaging in various activities. "Look at them. They spend half their time watching fictional narratives about imaginary heroes, and the other half arguing about which processed food items are superior. They're barely out of their evolutionary cradle." The projection showed humans in their dwellings, their places of commerce, their educational facilities, all blissfully unaware of the armada poised to forever change their existence. "The Confederation Council expects this integration to be completed within 1 standard solar cycle," Nax continued, pacing the length of the observation deck. "We'll establish the usual protocol. First contact, demonstration of superior force, acceptance of terms, installation of a governance node. The humans will adapt, or, well, they'll adapt." Lieutenant Dax Vorla, the young tactical officer whose carapace had barely hardened into its adult configuration, cleared his throat nervously. "Admiral, I was analyzing their entertainment signals, and I noticed something odd. They have thousands of stories about alien invasions." "Oh? And I suppose they heroically defeat these invaders with the power of love and nuclear warheads?" Nax rolled all 4 of his eyes simultaneously. "Sometimes, sir. But that's not what's strange. What's strange is how accurate some of the details are. Their fictional accounts include technologies we actually use: precision gravity manipulation, neural interfaces, even quantum entanglement communications." "Coincidence?" Nax snapped. "Even a broken chronometer is correct twice per rotation." "But, sir—" "That's quite enough, Lieutenant. Prepare the diplomatic drones for first contact. I want them deployed to all major population centers within the next 6 hours. Let's get this over with. I promised my broodmate I'd be home for the hatching season." As his crew scurried to follow orders, Admiral Nax returned his gaze to the seemingly innocent planet. Something about Earth made his exoskeleton itch, but he pushed the feeling aside. After all, what could a bunch of primates who still found bodily function jokes entertaining possibly have that could threaten the mighty Galactic Confederation? He was about to find out, and he wasn't going to like it. Not one bit. "Sir," Commander Lorne interrupted his thoughts again. There's one more thing. Our long-range sensors detect no defense grid, but we're picking up anomalous readings from their planet's core and oceans. Almost as if. As if what, Commander? Spit it out. As if something is watching us back, she finished quietly. Nax laughed, the sound echoing harshly across the polished metal of the bridge. Commander Lorne, I suggest you spend less time analyzing their fictional horror narratives. This is a simple integration mission, not a first contact conspiracy theory. Now, let's introduce ourselves to the neighbors, shall we? I'm sure they'll be appropriately awed by our magnificence. If only he knew how wrong he was. The diplomatic drones descended upon Earth's major cities with all the pomp and circumstance the Galactic Confederation could muster. Massive silver spheres, each the size of a small building, hovered above New York, Tokyo, London, Beijing, Moscow, and Rio de Janeiro, their surfaces pulsing with intricate patterns of blue light meant to inspire appropriate levels of awe and terror. Admiral Nax watched the live feeds from his command chair, anticipating the usual reactions: mass panic, military mobilization, possibly some religious fervor thrown in for good measure. It was all quite predictable after 17 previous integrations. What he wasn't prepared for was boredom. Are they seriously taking selfies with our drones? Nax sputtered, leaning forward in disbelief as the monitors showed humans pointing their primitive communication devices at the Confederation's technological marvels. Don't they understand they're looking at their new overlords? Ambassador Telavos, the Confederation's most experienced first-contact specialist, adjusted her translator implant nervously. Most unusual, Admiral. I've never seen a species react this way. No mass hysteria, minimal military response. It's almost as if they were expecting us. It's impossible, Nax growled. Their technology isn't capable of detecting our approach. We made sure of that. The main screen switched to a feed from Central Park in New York, where a large crowd had gathered beneath one of the drones. Some humans were lounging on blankets, as if attending a casual picnic. Others had set up what appeared to be merchandising stalls selling hastily printed T-shirts with crude drawings of the drones. Is that human drinking a beverage labeled Alien Invasion IPA? Lieutenant Vorla asked, squinting at the screen. Enough of this nonsense, Nax barked. Ambassador Voss, initiate formal communication protocols. Let's see how blasé they are when we start making demands. Ambassador Voss nodded and activated the communication relay. The diplomatic drones simultaneously projected massive holograms of her four-armed, golden-scaled form above each city. People of Earth. She began, her voice translated into all major human languages simultaneously. I am Ambassador Telavos of the Galactic Confederation. We come to integrate your world into our benevolent alliance of advanced species. Your cooperation will ensure a smooth transition as we guide you toward proper galactic citizenship. She paused for dramatic effect, then continued with the standard integration speech: resist and face technological consequences beyond your comprehension. Submit and enjoy the benefits of Confederation protection and knowledge. A middle-aged human in a rumpled suit stepped forward in New York, clearing his throat. Yeah, hi, Tom Barker, Deputy Mayor. Quick question, will this integration thing affect the Yankees game tonight? Because we've got a playoff series, and people are going to be really ticked off if they have to reschedule. Ambassador Voss blinked all three of her eyes in succession, a sign of extreme confusion among her species. I do not understand. I am threatening your planetary sovereignty. Sure, the deputy mayor nodded sympathetically. It's just that we've got permits and everything for the game. TV contracts. You know how it is. From the London feed, a woman with bright pink hair shouted, your translator's got a bit of a northern accent. Are you lot from Space Manchester or something? This was followed by appreciative laughter from the crowd. Admiral, Voss hissed through a private channel, something is very wrong here. They should be terrified or at least impressed. Instead, they're treating this like entertainment. Nax snarled and grabbed the communication controls. Humans, you will show proper respect to the Galactic Confederation. Your primitive weapons are useless against our technology. Your cities could be reduced to ash with a single command. From the Beijing feed, a young woman in business attire stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said in perfect galactic standard, not the translated version, but the actual language of the Confederation, but threatening civilian populations violates Article 7 of the Galactic Charter of Rights, established in the Proxima Centauri Accords. Would you like to rephrase your statement? Absolute silence fell across the bridge of the dominant paradigm. Did she just? Commander Lorne whispered. How could she possibly know about the charter? Ambassador Voss gasped. It's never been translated into any human language. It's not even shared with species below level 5 civilization status. Admiral Nax's exoskeleton paled to a sickly yellow. Cut the feeds. Now, recall the diplomatic drones. Something is very, very wrong here. As the drones rapidly ascended back toward the Confederation fleet, the humans below waved cheerfully. A few held up signs reading "Come back soon" and "First contact after party at Rick's bar, aliens drink free." Admiral, Science Officer Plex Darrow spoke up from his station, his voice unusually quiet. "You might want to see this. I've been analyzing their global communications network, and there are references to us, specific references dating back decades. They've been discussing the Confederation by name long before we ever approached their solar system." Admiral Nax felt a sensation he hadn't experienced since his larval stage, genuine fear. "How?" he asked simply. "Is that possible?" "This can't be right," Science Officer Plex Darrow muttered as he cross-referenced the data for the 5th time. The science bay of the dominant paradigm hummed with activity as analysts pored over information streaming in from reconnaissance probes dispatched to various corners of the galaxy. Admiral Nax had ordered a full investigation after the disastrous first contact attempt, and the results were troubling. "Officer Darrow, the Admiral is demanding updates," Commander Lorne announced as she entered the bay. "Please tell me you have something that won't make him molt prematurely." Darrow's eye stalks drooped the equivalent of a human grimace. "I wish I did. But what we've found defies everything we thought we knew about galactic history." He gestured to the holographic display dominating the center of the room. It showed ruins on a distant planet in the Andraxis system, a world the Confederation had catalogued but never fully explored due to its lack of valuable resources. "These ruins on Andraxis IV," Darrow explained, highlighting portions of the crumbling structures, contain writing that our linguists have now confirmed is an ancient form of human script. Carbon dating puts these settlements at approximately 35,000 standard years old. Lorne's bioluminescence flickered with distress. "That's not possible. Humans haven't even mastered rudimentary interplanetary travel. They've barely set foot on their own moon." "That's what we thought," Darrow agreed. "But look at this." The hologram shifted to show artifacts recovered from various archaeological sites across 3 different star systems. Each displayed variations of the same symbols that matched ancient human writing systems. "And it gets worse," Darrow continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Our historians have been reviewing the ancient texts from the Brentari archives. They found references to beings matching human description who supposedly seeded the stars long before the Brentari achieved spaceflight." Commander Lorne stared at the evidence, her professional composure cracking. "The Admiral needs to see this immediately." "Preposterous," Admiral Nax roared, slamming all 4 fists onto the conference table. "You expect me to believe that these monkeys are actually some kind of ancient spacefaring species? Have you lost your exoskeletons entirely?" Science Officer Darrow stood his ground, though his eye stalks quivered slightly. "The evidence is compelling, Admiral. We've found human writing on ruins across 17 different worlds so far, all dating back thousands of years before our own civilizations developed space travel. Not to mention, added senior historian Jalxus Moore, a wizened praxi whose translucent skin revealed the slow pulsing of her brain. The ancient Kovalian tapestries clearly depict tall, two-armed beings guiding their early development of agriculture. Beings that match human morphology precisely. Admiral Nax paced the length of the conference room, his normally immaculate uniform rumpled from hours of emergency meetings. Next, you'll tell me these humans built the galaxy. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. You can't be serious, Nax whispered, his mandibles clicking rapidly in agitation. Ambassador Voss cleared her throat. Admiral, I've been authorized to share classified information from the diplomatic archives. For centuries, there have been rumors of an ancient race called the Shepherds who supposedly guided the early development of numerous species, including our own. These were always dismissed as creation myths, but now you think these humans are your mythical shepherds? Nax laughed, though the sound held no humor. The same humans who spend hours watching videos of juvenile felines on their data networks. Sir, Lieutenant Vorla interrupted, entering the conference room with a portable data terminal. You need to see this. We've intercepted and decoded transmissions from Earth to hundreds of developing worlds throughout the galaxy. He set the terminal on the table and activated it. The holographic display showed a map of the galaxy with countless points of light representing monitored worlds. They're watching them, Vorla explained, his voice filled with wonder, observing their development, occasionally intervening in subtle ways, just as they apparently did with our ancestors. This is a trick, Nax insisted, but his conviction was wavering. Some kind of elaborate deception. To what end, Admiral? Asked Commander Lorne. What could they possibly gain by pretending to be an ancient species? Especially when they showed no interest in impressing us during first contact? Science Officer Darrow manipulated the display to zoom in on one particular transmission. This message was sent from Earth to a pre-spaceflight civilization in the Omega Sector, he explained. It contains detailed instructions on how to modify their agricultural practices to survive a coming climate shift. The signature at the end, he paused, clearly uncomfortable. The signature, Nax prompted impatiently. It's signed Terran Oversight, Shepard Protocol, year 342,871. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They're claiming to have been doing this for over 300,000 years, Ambassador Voss whispered. That's 10 times longer than our entire recorded history. Admiral Nax slumped into his chair, his exoskeleton losing its rigid posture for the first time in his career. If this is true, if humans have been manipulating galactic development for millennia, then our entire understanding of our place in the universe is wrong, historian Moore finished for him. We're not the advanced civilization bringing enlightenment to a primitive world. We're the children who just walked into the adults' room. No, Nax said, straightening suddenly. I refuse to accept this. Prepare a direct communication link to their leadership. I want answers from these humans, not more speculation and ancient fairy tales. As his officers hurried to obey, Admiral Nax stared out the viewport at the blue-green planet below. For the first time in his distinguished career, he felt completely out of his depth. Just what are you? He murmured to the seemingly innocent world. And what game have you been playing all this time? The grand meeting chamber aboard the dominant paradigm had been specifically designed to intimidate. Towering ceilings that made visitors feel small, lighting that cast imposing shadows, acoustics that amplified the voices of Confederation officials while subtly diminishing those of their guests. It was psychological warfare disguised as architecture, none of which seemed to affect Director Eliza Blackwood in the slightest. The human woman sat calmly in the oversized chair provided for her, sipping from a container of what the ship's scanners identified as coffee. She wore a simple gray suit that, while clearly formal by human standards, seemed almost insultingly casual for a diplomatic meeting of this magnitude. Her only adornment was a small silver pin on her lapel shaped like a shepherd's crook. "I appreciate your hospitality, Admiral Nax," she said, her voice carrying a warm southern accent that the translator struggled to properly convey. "Though I must say, your ship's artificial gravity is calibrated about 0.02 Gs too heavy for optimal human comfort. An easy adjustment if you're inclined." Admiral Nax, flanked by Ambassador Voss and his senior staff, glared at the human. "We are not here to discuss your comfort, Director Blackwood. We are here for answers." "Of course you are," she replied with a smile that suggested she was humoring him. "You've made quite the interesting discovery, haven't you?" "Interesting?" Nax's mandibles clicked rapidly in agitation. "Your species has apparently deceived the entire galactic community. You present yourselves as primitives while secretly monitoring and manipulating developing civilizations across the galaxy. But you have ruins on planets you shouldn't even know exist. And now you sit there, drinking your bitter stimulant, acting as if this is all perfectly normal." Blackwood set down her coffee cup. "Admiral, has it occurred to you that perhaps we weren't deceiving anyone? We never claimed to be primitive. You simply assumed we were based on what you saw. Your technology. The technology we choose to use on Earth is not the sum total of human capability," she interrupted smoothly. "Just as you might choose to walk rather than fly, even though your species is capable of both." Ambassador Voss leaned forward. "Director Blackwood, our evidence suggests human presence on distant worlds dating back tens of thousands of years. Yet your historical records indicate you've barely begun space exploration. How do you explain this discrepancy?" Blackwood's expression softened. "Ambassador, humanity left Earth for the first time approximately 2.7 million years ago. What you're seeing on your world today is, well, let's call it a deliberate return to our roots." A stunned silence fell over the Confederation representatives. "That's not possible," Science Officer Darrow finally managed. "No species could maintain a continuous civilization for that long without leaving more evidence." "Who said anything about continuous?" Blackwood asked, raising an eyebrow. "We've had our ups and downs, our dark ages and golden eras. We've nearly wiped ourselves out more than once. But each time we've learned and grown. In about 500,000 years ago, we decided to adopt a more observational role in galactic affairs." "The Shepherd Protocol," Commander Lorne whispered. "Exactly," Blackwood nodded. "We realized that direct intervention rarely ends well for developing species. So we established the protocol, a system of careful observation and minimal guidance. We help species overcome extinction-level threats, gently nudge them towards sustainable development, but otherwise let them find their own path." Admiral Nax slammed his fist on the table. "And you expect us to believe this fantasy? That your kind has been playing gods while the rest of us evolved? Where is your evidence?" Blackwood sighed. "I was hoping we could have this conversation without resorting to demonstrations, but very well." She tapped the shepherd's crook pin on her lapel once. Every light on the dominant paradigm went out simultaneously. The hum of the ship's massive engines fell silent. Emergency systems, backup power, even the personal devices carried by the Confederation officials all dead. In the pitch darkness, Blackwood's voice remained calm. "Don't worry. Your life support systems are still functioning. We would never put your crew at risk." A soft blue glow emanated from her pin, providing just enough light to see the stunned faces of the Confederation representatives. "This vessel," she continued, "represents the pinnacle of Confederation technology. 23 different species contributed to its design. It has 7 redundant power systems and is theoretically impossible to disable completely without physical damage. Yet here we are." Admiral Nax found his voice, though it had lost all its previous confidence. What have you done to my ship?" "Nothing permanent," Blackwood assured him. "We've simply initiated a temporary quantum field that inhibits certain types of energy transfer. Your systems will reset in approximately 30 seconds. As if on cue, the lights flickered back on. The engines hummed back to life. Everything returned to normal as if nothing had happened. That's not possible, Science Officer Darrow stammered. You can't just, you would need to. Precisely, Blackwood nodded. We would need technology so advanced that it appears, as one of your Earth authors once put it, indistinguishable from magic. Yet here we are. She stood up, straightening her suit jacket. Admiral, I understand this is difficult to accept. Your Confederation has built its identity around being the most advanced civilization in known space. Finding out you're essentially a teenager who just walked into the adults' dinner party as well, it's humbling. We've been there ourselves, long ago. Yeah. You said you've been watching Species, Ambassador Voss said quietly. Have you been watching us? Guiding us? Blackwood's expression was gentle. The Raxacodians were struggling with a genetic bottleneck about 12,000 years ago. The Praxi nearly destroyed their atmosphere with early industrialization. The Zordex almost wiped themselves out in a civil war over resource allocation. Each species she named caused the corresponding Confederation officials to pale or display their species equivalent of shock. In each case, she continued, there were small interventions. A mysterious scientist who appeared with a solution, an unexpected discovery that led to a new path, a diplomatic breakthrough that seemed to come from nowhere. So we're just your puppets? Admiral Nax asked, his voice hollow. Not at all, Blackwood replied firmly. We guide, but we never control. The accomplishments of your species are your own. We simply help you avoid the worst mistakes. The ones we made ourselves long ago. She tapped her pin again, and a holographic display appeared above the table far more detailed and stable than any Confederation technology could produce. It showed the galaxy, with thousands of worlds highlighted in different colors. The green worlds are species we're currently observing. The blue ones are those that have achieved space flight but aren't yet ready for the truth. The yellow are those we've recently revealed ourselves to. And the red, she paused, are those that rejected our guidance and chose isolation. There were very few red worlds. Your Confederation, she said, pointing to a cluster of worlds near the galactic center, has been doing exactly what we hoped, bringing species together, establishing common laws, building something greater than the sum of its parts. You've done wonderfully. Admiral Nax stared at the display, his worldview crumbling around him. If what you say is true, what happens now? Blackwood smiled. Now, Admiral, I invite you to visit Earth. The real Earth. Not just the surface we show to the galaxy, but what lies beneath. I think it's time you learned who your neighbors really are. What exactly am I looking at? Admiral Nax asked, his voice barely audible as he stared through the viewport of the small human vessel. The ship, if you could call it, that had no visible engines, no command consoles as he understood them, and appeared to be made of some crystalline material that shifted colors in response to the light of the dying red giant star they orbited. Director Blackwood had called it a shuttle, though it had traversed 17 light-years in what felt like a mere eye blink. That, Admiral, Blackwood replied, is the Cradle. Before them hung an enormous structure, a perfect torus, encircling a swirl of light and energy that defied conventional physics. The station was easily 1,000 kilometers in diameter, its surface etched with patterns and symbols that seemed to shift and change as they watched. Ships of various designs entered and exited the structure through apertures that opened and closed like living tissue. How have we never detected this? Nax whispered, his exoskeleton pale with shock. The same way you never detected our outposts on 78 worlds within Confederation space, Blackwood said matter-of-factly. Quantum displacement fields, dimensional folding, consciousness-directed perception filters, you can choose whichever explanation makes the most sense to you. The simple version is, you don't see us unless we want to be seen. Their shuttle glided toward one of the apertures, which dilated open like a pupil expanding in darkness. The cradle was constructed approximately 1.8 million years ago, Blackwood continued as they passed through the opening. It serves as our primary administrative hub for this section of the galaxy. There are 14 others strategically positioned throughout the Milky Way. Inside, the scale became even more apparent. The interior of the torus was an inverted world, landmasses, oceans and clouds curved upward in a perfect circle, with the strange energy swirl at the center providing light and, presumably, gravity. Cities of impossible architecture dotted the landscape, connected by threads of light that Nax assumed were transportation systems. How many humans are there?" he asked, trying to process what he was seeing. "Currently active. About 47 billion throughout this galaxy," Blackwood answered, guiding their shuttle toward one of the cities. Although that number fluctuates. Many choose to enter suspension for centuries at a time. Others upload their consciousness temporarily. Some choose to be reborn on Earth or other primary worlds to experience life from a different perspective. Upload? Reborn? Nax shook his head in disbelief. "You've conquered death itself?" Blackwood laughed a genuine, warm sound. "Not conquered, Admiral. Nothing is conquered. We've simply reached an understanding with it. Mortality and immortality both have their places and purposes." The shuttle landed on a platform that seemed to form itself as they approached. As they disembarked, Nax noticed other species walking among the humans, some he recognized, others completely alien to him. This way, Blackwood gestured toward a towering structure that resembled a tree made of light. "The Council is waiting." Inside the structure was a vast chamber with walls that displayed what appeared to be real-time views of thousands of worlds simultaneously. In the center stood a holographic representation of the galaxy, with intricate webs of light connecting various star systems. "This is our monitoring center," Blackwood explained. "From here we track the development of approximately 18,000 species with potential for sapient evolution. The blue network you see represents human settlements and outposts. We currently have a presence in roughly 40% of the galaxy." Nax stared at the display, watching as data flowed through the network, occasionally triggering alerts that human operators quickly addressed. "Yesterday we prevented an asteroid impact that would have wiped out a promising aquatic species in the Carina arm," Blackwood said, pointing to one world. "Last week, we neutralized a gamma-ray burst that would have sterilized 12 developing worlds. This is the Shepherd Protocol in action, Admiral, not controlling but protecting, and guiding, nurturing." "But why?" Nax finally asked, finding his voice. "Why hide on Earth, pretending to be primitive? Why not reveal yourselves to the galaxy?" An older human man approached them, his dark skin contrasting with hair that had gone completely white. He wore simple clothing without insignia or rank, yet something about him commanded immediate respect. "Because we tried the other way," he said, his voice deep and resonant. "I'm Director Powell, Admiral. Welcome to the truth." He gestured to a section of the display that zoomed in to show what appeared to be ruins on a devastated world. 3 million years ago, humanity was where your Confederation is now, proud, expanding, certain of our superiority. We established an empire that spanned thousands of worlds. We uplifted species by force, imposed our vision of civilization, believed ourselves to be benevolent rulers. Powell's expression darkened. "And then we encountered a species that had been watching us all along, just as we now watch others. They showed us that our benevolence was merely arrogance dressed as altruism. The lesson was painful." Blackwood touched Nax's arm gently. "After the collapse of what we now call the First Expansion, humanity rebuilt with a new philosophy. We realized that true advancement isn't about imposing will, but about fostering growth. The Shepherd Protocol was born from that understanding. As for why we appear primitive on Earth," Powell continued, "it's quite simple. We choose to be. When you've mastered every technology, explored every scientific frontier, and can literally reshape matter with thought. Simplicity becomes the ultimate luxury. Powell guided them to another section of the galactic display, highlighting a region that encompassed the entire Confederation. Your civilization, Admiral, exists in what we call a protected development zone. We established it 50,000 years ago when we detected the first hints of potential in 17 species that would eventually form the core of your Confederation. We've intervened only when necessary to prevent extinction events, allowing you to develop largely on your own terms. So everything we've built, everything we've achieved, Nax said quietly, has been under your supervision? Like children in a playpen? More like saplings in a greenhouse, Blackwood corrected gently. Protected from the harshest elements while you grow strong enough to withstand them on your own. The galaxy is far more dangerous than you know, Admiral. There are forces out there that would have eliminated your civilizations long ago without our protective measures. Nax stared at the display, watching as alerts continued to trigger and resolve across thousands of worlds. The scale of the operation of humanity's true presence was beyond anything he could have imagined. "Why show me this now?" he finally asked. "Why not continue your observation?" Powell and Blackwood exchanged a glance. Because Powell said gravely, "Something is coming, Admiral. Something even we cannot simply shepherd away. And when it arrives, we'll need every sapient species fighting together, not separated by illusions of hierarchy or false paradigms of advancement." He waved a hand, and the galactic display shifted to show a dark void approaching from beyond the galactic rim. The real test is about to begin. Admiral Korvis Nax stood alone on a balcony overlooking the vast interior landscape of the Cradle, his mind racing with impossible choices. Behind him, the doors to the council chamber remained closed while Earth's leaders deliberated. Before him stretched a vista that shattered everything he had ever believed about his place in the universe. He had been given 3 hours to process what he had learned before meeting with the full council of observers. 3 hours to decide the fate of the Confederation and possibly his own sanity. Beautiful, isn't it? Nax turned to find Commander Lorne standing beside him, though he hadn't heard her approach. For a moment he thought she was another human illusion, but the familiar purple bioluminescence confirmed it was indeed his second in command. "They brought you here too?" he asked. "About an hour ago," she nodded. "The rest of the senior staff as well. They thought you might appreciate a familiar face during your adjustment period." Nax's mandibles clicked in bitter amusement. Adjustment period. As if this is some minor cultural shock. We've discovered that everything we believed about our place in the cosmos is wrong. It's that we've been living in a controlled environment like specimens in a laboratory. "Is that what you think this is?" Lorne asked quietly. "A laboratory? What would you call it?" Nax gestured at the sprawling civilization before them. "Look at their power. They could have conquered us 1,000 times over. Instead, they watch us, nudge us, guide us like pets. Or like children," Lorne suggested. "There's a difference between control and protection, Admiral." Nax turned to study his second in command. "You seem remarkably calm about all this." "Perhaps because I don't see it as a threat to my identity," she replied. "My people have always believed that we were not the first intelligence to walk among the stars. Finding out that humans preceded us is surprising in its specifics, but not in its general principle. And the fact that they've been manipulating our development doesn't bother you." "They showed me the records," Lorne said. 300 years ago, my homeworld was targeted by a rogue comet that would have caused an extinction-level event. It mysteriously changed course. 200 years before that, a plague that would have wiped out my species was suddenly cured when a brilliant scientist had an unexplained breakthrough. She met his gaze steadily. "Was that manipulation, Admiral? Or preservation?" Before Nax could answer, the doors to the council chamber slid open soundlessly. Director Blackwood emerged, along with the white-haired Powell and several other humans whose clothing styles suggested origins from various Earth cultures. Admiral Nax, Blackwood said formally, "The Council will see you now." The council chamber was surprisingly modest, a circular room with 13 seats arranged in a semicircle. The humans who occupied them wore no special regalia, no marks of office beyond the now familiar shepherd's crookpins. "Admiral Korvis Nax of the Galactic Confederation," announced a woman with features suggesting East Asian ancestry. "I am Director Lin, current head of the Council of Observers. We welcome you as the first official representative of your alliance to meet with us." Nax stood stiffly at attention, unsure of the proper protocol when addressing beings whose civilization predated his by millions of years. "You have been shown the truth of our existence," Director Lin continued. "A truth we have concealed not out of malice or manipulation, but out of respect for the natural development of your species and cultures." "Respect?" Nax couldn't help the bitter tone that crept into his voice. "Is that what you call it when you play gods from the shadows?" A tall, dark-skinned man with intricate scarification patterns on his face leaned forward. "We have never claimed godhood, Admiral. We are simply older siblings who learned our lessons the hard way." "What Director Abayomi means," Powell interjected, "is that humanity's path was considerably more painful than yours has been. We suffered multiple near extinctions, devastating wars, and ecological catastrophes before we learned wisdom. The Shepherd Protocol exists to help other species avoid our mistakes." "And what now?" Nax asked, looking from one council member to another. "Now that I know the truth, what am I supposed to tell my people? That we've been living in a protective bubble created by ancient humans? That our greatest achievements were only possible because you allowed them to be?" "You tell them nothing," said an elderly woman with silver hair. "For everything. That choice belongs to you, Admiral." Nax blinked in surprise. "You would leave such a decision to me?" "Of course," Blackwood said. "Force or coercion has never been our way, not for millions of years. We're offering you partnership, Admiral, not subjugation." "Partnership," Nax repeated incredulously. "Between a child and an adult? Between different perspectives," corrected Director Lin. "Your confederation may be younger, but you possess insights and approaches we might have forgotten in our long existence. Fresh eyes often see what ancient ones miss." Powell stepped forward, offering Nax a small data crystal. "This contains evidence of every intervention we've made regarding Confederation species over the past 50,000 years. You'll find they are remarkably few, and almost exclusively focused on preventing extinction events." Nax took the crystal, staring at it as if it might bite him. "And the approaching threat you mentioned? The darkness beyond the rim?" "That," said Director Abayomi gravely, "is why we're having this conversation now. Something is coming. Admiral, something even we cannot face alone. The time for shepherding from afar is ending. The galaxy will need all its children standing together as equals." Equals. The word hung in the air between them. As Nax looked around the chamber, a startling realization washed over him. Despite their power, despite their ancient history, the humans genuinely saw the Confederation as potential partners. Not lesser beings to be commanded, but allies to be respected. "You know," he said finally, "throughout Confederation history, our greatest breakthroughs always seemed to come just when we needed them most. Moments of crisis that somehow resolved themselves through unlikely discoveries or unexpected alliances." Director Lin nodded, a small smile on her face. "The lightest touch is often the most effective, Admiral. We never gave you solutions, merely the chance to find them yourselves." "And now?" Nax asked. "What happens now?" "Now," Blackwood said, extending her hand in what Nax recognized as a human greeting gesture, "we face the future together, if you're willing." After a moment's hesitation, Admiral Korvis Nax reached out and clasped her hand with one of his own. "I believe," he said, "the Confederation might be ready for some new neighbors." The Grand Assembly Hall of the Confederation capital buzzed with tension. Representatives from 17 member species filled the chamber to capacity, their murmurs creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and rumbles. Rumors had spread like wildfire since the dominant paradigm returned from Earth with a mysterious diplomatic packet and an admiral who seemed profoundly changed. Admiral Korvis Nax stood before the Confederation Council, acutely aware of the gravity of his words. The data crystal from the Human Council felt impossibly heavy in his pocket. Esteemed counselors, he began, his voice steady despite his racing thoughts. Our mission to Earth has resulted in a diplomatic agreement that will fundamentally alter our understanding of our place in the galaxy. He paused, looking around the chamber at the expectant faces. Just days ago, he would have relished their anticipation, savored the moment before revealing humanity's primitive status and the glory of another successful integration. Now, that version of himself seemed like a naive child. Humanity, he continued, is not what we believed. They are not a recently emerged species requiring our guidance. They are, in fact, among the oldest spacefaring civilizations in our galaxy, with a history spanning millions of years. The chamber erupted in disbelief. Various representatives shouted questions or denials, their universal translators creating a cacophony of overlapping voices. Supreme Counselor Varix, a venerable Brenturi whose crystalline exoskeleton reflected the chamber's lights in kaleidoscopic patterns, raised his appendages for silence. Admiral Nax, he said once the clamor subsided, these are extraordinary claims. What evidence do you offer? Nax nodded to Commander Lorne, who activated the holographic projector. The chamber darkened as images began to play ancient ruins bearing human writing, historical records of interventions that saved various Confederation species from extinction, and finally breathtaking views of the Cradle and other human installations throughout the galaxy. The humans, Nax explained as the images cycled through, have been operating under something called the Shepherd Protocol. They have guided and protected developing species, including all of us, while remaining hidden, allowing us to develop according to our own paths. You expect us to believe, hissed Counselor Thex of the Zordex Collective, that these humans have been manipulating our development from the shadows? That they've been playing gods while we struggled and fought for every advancement? Not gods, Nax corrected firmly. Guardians. They intervened only to prevent extinction events or calamities beyond our control. Everything else, our cultures, our technologies, our societies, those are truly our own achievements. He pressed a control, and the hologram changed to show the diplomatic agreement. Humanity is not seeking to rule us or to demonstrate superiority. They are offering partnership. They believe the Confederation has graduated, as they put it. We have proven ourselves capable of responsible galactic citizenship. And why would such an advanced species need partners? Asked Counselor Mira of the Praxi Federation. Because something is coming, Nax replied solemnly. A threat from beyond the galactic rim that even humanity cannot face alone. They need us as much as we have needed them. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. I have seen their civilization, Nax continued into the silence. I have walked among beings who have mastered technologies we can barely comprehend. And do you know what I learned about what it truly means to be advanced? He paused, remembering Director Blackwood's words. True advancement isn't measured by technological might or territorial control. It's measured by wisdom, by knowing when to act and when to allow others to find their own way. By understanding that guidance without freedom is merely another form of chains. Supreme Counselor Varix leaned forward. And you believe we should trust these humans? Enter into partnership with beings who have concealed their true nature from us for millennia? I do, Nax replied without hesitation, because they could have conquered us 1,000 times over. Instead, they chose to watch over us, to protect us from threats we never even knew existed, all while allowing us the dignity of our own development. The council chambers remained quiet as the representatives processed this paradigm-shifting information. There is one more thing, Nax added finally. Something Director Powell revealed just before our departure. He activated the final holographic sequence showing an ancient artifact recovered from deep space. It depicted humanoid figures looking up at tall, ethereal beings of light. Humanity itself was once guided by another, even older species. The humans call them the precursors. They too operated under a protocol similar to the Shepherd Protocol, guiding humanity through its early development before departing the galaxy entirely. You mean to say, Counselor Mira whispered, that this cycle of guardianship has happened before? It appears to be the natural order, Nax confirmed. The guided eventually become guides themselves. And now humanity believes we are ready to join them in that responsibility. Later that night, after the Council had voted narrowly to accept the human diplomatic proposal, Admiral Korvis Nax stood on the observation deck of the capital station. The vast spiral of the galaxy spread out before him, each point of light potentially home to civilizations at various stages of development. How many of those lights, he wondered, were already under human protection? How many might someday be under Confederation guardianship? And what other secrets did the endless stars hold? A beautiful view, said a voice beside him. Nax turned to find Director Blackwood standing there, somehow having boarded the most secure Confederation facility without anyone noticing. I thought humans preferred to remain on Earth, he remarked, not entirely surprised by her sudden appearance. Blackwood smiled. Most do, but some of us enjoy a bit of field work now and then. The counselors are still processing everything, Nax told her. It's not every day you discover you're not quite as important in the grand scheme as you thought. Oh, I wouldn't say that, Blackwood replied, looking out at the stars. Every species is important in the grand scheme. That's rather the point of the Shepherd Protocol. Nax studied her profile, still finding it hard to reconcile this seemingly ordinary human with the power she represented. The precursors you mentioned, he said finally. Where did they go? Blackwood's expression turned wistful, beyond, to whatever comes after mastering a galaxy. Perhaps to other galaxies, perhaps to other dimensions entirely. They left us only hints and whispers enough to guide us, just as we've guided you? And someday, will humans follow them? Someday, she nodded. When the time is right. When we know the galaxy is in good hands. She turned to face him fully. That's why this partnership matters, Admiral. Because someday the Confederation may find itself taking up the mantle we've carried. Teaching the next generation of species how to reach for the stars without destroying themselves in the process. Nax looked back out at the galaxy, seeing it with new eyes not as a territory to be conquered, but as a garden to be tended. Each star a seed of potential, each world a unique expression of the universe coming to know itself. I think, he said slowly, I'm beginning to understand what it truly means to be advanced. Blackwood smiled. That, Admiral Nax, is exactly why humanity welcomes you as graduates. Not because you've mastered the atom or reached the stars, but because you're asking the right questions. Together they stood in companionable silence, watching the eternal dance of the cosmos, past guardians and future guardians, united in purpose beneath the ancient light.